For those of you who are seeking to be ordained or think that that might be a possibility for you at some point after your theological education, we need to familiarize yourself with what's known as postulancy, or sometimes called candidates committees or ordination committees in different churches in different areas. Because although Trinity can give you an excellent education and help you acquire all kinds of skills and knowledge that will enable you to be effective pastoral ministers in the church, we don't decide anything about ordination. Right? So if you want to be an ordained pastor or priest in the church, whatever church you serve in, you need to go through a process that is organized by your regional church. And for Anglicans, that's the diocese. And for other denominations, you would have an equivalent, whether that's I won't start all kinds of examples, but your regional church body. And you need to find out who that is in your denomination and find out what they require, because they will be the ones making the decision. Sometimes candidates committees or examining chaplains or ordination boards, whatever the term is, they might want to have some input on what courses you take as your electives, or they might want to make sure that Trinity College's curriculum covers certain things. Don't worry, we probably do. We know almost everything anyone would want. We cover, or we can always add something and adapt our program to make sure we are providing you with the education that your ordination board requires you to have. But generally, we tend to fit very well with what churches are looking for. But you need to make sure what they expect, because they will be the ones deciding. Right? Now, if you're never sure who to contact in your church, you can always contact Sydney Young in the Faculty of Divinity office, or myself, and we can help you find out who to contact. Another helpful person might be Walter Deller, our Director of Field Education. We'd be glad to help you figure out whether there's a certain church board that covers your area, or if you don't really have a diocese or a local church, but you want to explore becoming ordained in a certain denomination, we can help you think through, all right, where in this denomination should I begin a conversation? Because you have to have a conversation with them. Now, what does that kind of process look like? Well, it's kind of like they all sort of have their own version of what the process is, but there's usually these basic steps that you have in a postulancy process or ordination process. Normally, they will expect you to be studying. So very few ordination boards make a decision about ordination before you start your theological studies. So you might be glad to have a conversation, but especially Anglicans, they're going to say, all right, that's great that you're interested in ordination, now go start doing an MDiv. Right? And then we'll talk to you as you do your MDiv. So don't imagine you're going to get all this sorted before you start your theological education. That doesn't tend to be how it works in North America. But you have to have a first meeting with whoever the representative is from your diocese or church organization or ordination board. So you need to make an appointment to see somebody. And then they'll talk to you and they'll get to know you a little bit, and they'll probably find out what you are studying in your theological education, or when you're planning to begin your theological education. You might want to talk a little bit about what they'd hope you would do during that period of time. And you carry on a conversation with them until there's a moment when you formally apply to become, they have different words, a postulant or a candidate for ordination and so on. And this is sort of the moment when the church makes a kind of commitment to you, right? They say, we think that you're probably called to be ordained to serve in the church. We see a lot of promise in you, and so we're going to walk with you for the final stage of your preparation, right? In a more hands-on way. So you need to apply for that status. And there's different moments in time when churches do that, but often it's often it's before Christmas, like November, or just after Christmas in January or February. Again, you can talk to one of us about how to apply and who to apply to. So you're going to have to put in an application. And what is that? Normally the application involves writing some things down, usually a autobiographical piece, not along like a, I don't know, 4 or 5 pages, maybe 2 pages, depends on the denomination, but about yourself, why you think you're called to be ordained. Usually something about your beliefs, right? So what, they have different questions, or what you think a priest is, or what you think it means to serve in the church. Usually something about what the challenges of the church are now, as you understand them, and usually some, your own sense of, what you're called to do, like what you feel called by God, not just to be a priest or to be ordained, but to do what? What do you see are your gifts, or what do you think God wants to use for the church's benefit? Something like that. Maybe a total of 8 to 12 pages, depending on the denomination. You submit that, and then this postulancy committee or this ordination board will decide from those who apply who's going to move on to the next stage. And the next stage is meeting with some kind of committee or group to be interviewed. Normally, so they'll invite you to a day or to a weekend to be interviewed, right? And usually you're interviewed more than once. Sometimes it's one-on-one. You'll talk with one person in particular. Sometimes it might be in a group conversation, or sometimes there might be sort of 3 people in a room and they ask you questions. And again, they're going to ask you the same kind of questions you write on. Why do you think you're called? What do what's your background in the church? What do you think you have to offer? What do you think the challenges are of the church today, and how do you see yourself engaging with those challenges? Perhaps something about who you think God is, right? What you think ordination means, like what difference does it make to be ordained? Anglicans usually get asked a little bit about the sacraments, what you think the Eucharist is, or baptism, or something like that. And other denominations would do something similar. So you need to show that you have a certain maturity and awareness of what it is you're asking to be considered for. You need to show you have some sense of what the ministry of the church is and how it works out in today's world. And you have to show some sense that you have an understanding and a spirituality that is informed and prepared sufficiently for the challenges of ordained ministry. So, and I have to say, not everyone who applies gets selected the first time. And that's always very, very painful for students. And I understand that, and anyone on a postulancy committee or ordination board understands that. It's not easy. But know this, I have known many people who applied to be considered for ordination and were not selected the first time and found that very painful. But they came back and applied again and were accepted and went on to very vibrant and rewarding ministries. So sometimes when the church says no, that is a reason to really perhaps consider, maybe I'm not called to this. But if you continue to feel very called to ministry, a no after a first application for ordination does not necessarily mean that you misread God's intention or you misread your own heart, but just either you weren't ready, or the people who were making the selection didn't understand you well enough in that moment. And so never presume that a no after a first application closes this door on your vocational path and hopes, because it may well be that you just need to try again. Again, for any other questions about postulancy, we often have workshops during the academic year to help people prepare for certain church constituencies, certain dioceses, but you can always go to Sydney, to myself, or to Walter for some further guidance on how to prepare for any of these stages, or even where to begin to look to start the journey.